economic stability, education, social and community context, healthcare, and the built environment. These are 5 extremely important domains which comprise the social determinants of health. Hi, I'm Dr. Sri Banerjee, core faculty for the College of Health Sciences and Public Policy at Walden University. And in this lecture, I'm going to go over something that I had already presented in another venue, namely I had presented this in Excelsior College, and I wanted to actually provide a bit more detail within this presentation so that I can explain how exactly we can infuse the social determinants of health within the field of education. So let's get started. So the main areas that we'll be focusing on within this presentation are as follows. We'll be describing the social determinants of health framework. We'll go over the framework as it applies to curricular applications in kind of a case scenario format. We'll try something different. We'll also kind of demonstrate, and I'm not going to stick to just explaining in one discipline. This will be a cross-disciplinary explanation. But I'm going to demonstrate how the areas of nursing, public health, and other areas naturally are a fit for social determinants of health. Remember, when we're thinking about social determinants of health, we're going back to the 5 key domains, and those are economic stability, having equitable access to healthcare, education, having a proper built environment, and then it's really important to have considerations of social and community context. So if we're, instead of having education be one of 5 domains, imagine if we were to place education as a central theme, as a central focus in the paradigm in understanding education. So this can really allow us to provide equitable education. So when we're thinking about education, of course the social determinants of health framework is critical to really better understanding how to infuse this, but relating this back to also a global health context, thinking about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Out of those Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 4 is pertaining to education. And so early on, it's important to understand that this is not only a national priority, but also can be understood as kind of a global priority. So thinking about the social determinants of health, this is of course a framework to demonstrate that interconnected determinants play a role in influencing overall health. So it's a combination of multiple determinants. When they are accumulated, they really play a role in understanding overall health. But now let's translate this and convert this from healthcare and be thinking of education. So as I said, think about these from the context of the 5 domains, but also placing learning at the center of it all. That is really important. And then another crucial idea that really resonates with me is the idea that each group needs to be represented in a way that there needs to be a voice at the table. So there needs to be a seat at the table so that there's proper representation. So as we're thinking about social determinants, another important idea that I'll introduce here is the geospatial context. So the geographic distribution of many of these determinants are varied. So what may be the pattern within the southern part of the United States may not hold to be true in other parts of the country. So understanding that equity is something that not only predicts educational attainment, but it predicts this differentially based on where you live. And this is an important concept, and many times it's new when you're thinking about this, but really does matter where you live. And that was actually shown through a primary data analysis that I recently conducted. And this was using the 2021 county health rankings, where basically the income inequity, if you take the ratio of the 80th percentile to the 20th percentile and try to look for a relationship between income inequity and the percent educational attainment. So how many people between the ages of 25 to 44 had a certain level of education, had some college education? If we looked at that distribution, and then if we looked at the distribution that I just described about income inequity, then you would see that there's certain parts with important relationships. There's this map is provided here, and you can kind of see within the light blue, if you kind of take a look at these areas, then within the light blue you'll see there's more areas where there's high income inequity corresponding to lower percent of educational attainment. So that's light blue, and a lot of the southern states, and then the Appalachian region, a lot of these areas, a lot of the Rust Belt, places where industry has left. And then there's areas in Maine that also have this light blue. So I would encourage you to actually visit this map with what I have provided within this link, and then go in and try to link, try to go in and click on each of these areas and see if you can find your own local area, and see how the ratio is, and what the distribution is within your local area. So now thinking about a case study here, it's really important to relate what you're thinking to what you may encounter, what students may encounter, and this is in the area of healthcare, but it applies to public health and many different disciplines, because and currently, unfortunately, in the Ukraine, has been a war going on, the Russia-Ukraine war, and there's a lot of asylum seekers that are looking for places to relocate. And so one consideration that should be really focused on is that overall health and potential infectious diseases, including tuberculosis. So just imagine a 39-year-old female Ukrainian seeking asylum comes to your clinic and is suspected to have tuberculosis from the symptoms. So there might be some productive cough, sputum, and so you have to go through kind of the necessary steps in management, but also really early on be thinking about social determinants of health. And in your subjective assessment of the patient, you want to be thinking in these terms. You want to be thinking about housing containment, how practical it is, and some of the different financial struggles are real. And so economic stability right there is something that comes to the forefront when you're thinking about this case study. So then, if you're thinking about another case study, now we're looking at somebody who is a military veteran. And so she now is deciding to attend online courses. She has not attended school in a while. She's deciding on a career change. And so now she lives in Florida, so there happens to be hurricane season during fall season. And so due to the hurricane power outages, she's not able to submit on time the assignment. And so some real considerations there are the fact that how much does a hazard affect potential areas. And so with Florida, if you know targeted, sort of tailored information about areas that have been affected by hurricane, then you can potentially provide more leniency in deadlines in a way that previously you wouldn't be able to. So this is getting more information allows us to be more aware of social determinants and then allow us to infuse it better. So just thinking about employment places, and so I've displayed the employment places for nurse practitioners because thinking about federally qualified clinics and other places, it's really important to see that where are the people that are graduating being employed, and so this is one example of how social determinants of health can be infused by showing and looking for places where there might be individuals, marginalized individuals that may be seen. Another way is in public health. There might be organizations which are especially geared towards marginalized populations. Also homeless clinics. I've worked in such places as well, and so special considerations need to be given in terms of having a proper place to stay and other considerations. So this is actually the distribution of graduates by race, and I think this is pretty important to look at because there's different types of degree types, and so the race distribution by degree type shows that among graduates there is quite a bit of diversity, and so it's important also to have individuals who are mentors and professors, individuals that also reflect the diversity within graduates. So what are other ways? I've already been talking about quite a few ways that social determinants of health can be infused. But what are some additional ways? I think it's really important to know and understand the fact that while nursing it aligns well with social determinants of health, but it's also important to know social work, counseling, nutrition, and rehab specialists. These are crucial ancillary service, patient-centered areas that serve to provide a medical home environment, and that's really important. And I think as we move away from just one one physician providing care to providing kind of an all-round care, this provides a better coverage for the patient. So then there is more support. So in a public health approach, the focus is not only individuals, but also the communities. So it's the communities that people are born, live, learn, work, and play in. And this is actually throughout the life course. So it's not just, you know, for children or for adults for older age. It's for all age groups. And so I think this is really key to understanding implementation of social determinants of health. So here is a profound statement. I think it's important to know that instead of building the student around the classroom, let's build the classroom around the student. So let's create the resources, let's support the student where it's most needed. And so this is the concept of translating the medical home, applying the principles of inclusive teaching and learning, and providing that within the classroom setting. And this is what social determinants of health within the framework of education represents. This is what some call social determinants of learning. But you know, let's provide the students with the social determinant home. Let's do that for students. So, you know, unfortunately, I think it's important to note at this point as well, due to the pandemic, you know, we did not make the progress that was needed to achieve a lot of the goals that were set forth. So one of the goals that actually already passed was one set forth by our President Obama. This was something that was set for 2020. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic and everything, we couldn't achieve. And then there's sustainable development goals that are that we have set for 2030. And a lot of those goals we're actually not going to be achieving. Next year, there's going to be an evaluation to see how far we've come in meeting some of the sustainable development goals. And remember, I told you goal number 4 is pertaining to education. So that is one we're keeping a close eye on. But you know, what do we need to do? I know I told you, you know, the pandemic has wreaked havoc. What do we need to do to pick back up? Partnerships and investments in education. Of course, you know, if practicum sites are something that is part of your program, whether it's in public health, nursing, then let's look for practicum sites which are, you know, in diverse communities, which are there to not only uplift the communities, but also aid in learning. So especially if students are coming from an underserved community, then it's a natural fit for those students to you know, have some experiences in these places, and then potentially go back and practice. Sometimes there's agreements where if you are to practice for a number of years, then there might be loan sort of agreements as well. So a lot of areas to be looking into and ways to integrate some of this. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about something that is not very difficult to do and yet can have a powerful impact in infusing social determinants, and that is creating curricular statements. These statements, even though they are short and a lot of times do not take up too much of the syllabus, or wherever you want to place them. They can really provide a quick message as to what exactly is it that you're communicating. So like a diversity and inclusion syllabus statement, this is one that is many universities are using. Curricular statements, standard academic English or English language statement. This is one that in my home university and others I've seen implemented time and time again, and really is impactful. Planned acknowledgments and even wellness statements. So really, I want to focus on diversity and inclusion, but really all of these have to do with social determinants of health and social determinants of learning. So now, just to end this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end with the 3 means to achieve goal number 4. And number 1, very important, effective learning environments. And so a lot of times we don't spend too much time talking about the interface where students and instructors interact. And then increasing scholarship, so increasing incentives to join education. And then, of course, having the availability of qualified teachers, especially in low and middle income countries, but resource poor settings. So increasing these 3 can really go far to addressing some of these goals that I have gone over in Sustainable Development Goal number 4. The aim is to achieve a lot of these or all of these by 2030. Next year, we're going to be evaluating to see how far we've come along. The reality is, just like I talked about as it pertained to poverty, hunger, and also healthcare, COVID-19 has really impacted the education sector as well. Many children were not able to attend schools in person. And so they looked at online as a feasible option, but in reality, many people were not able to attend school. So there's a lot of groundwork to be made up, lost work effort from the pandemic that we need to make up in order to not only rebuild education, but also reorient and reframe so that we can take on the challenges in education of the 21st century head on. Happy Earth Day, and thank you for listening. So I wanted to end with this. Social determinants of health is something that is natural in the fields of education, in the field of healthcare, and learners are always encouraged to look into understanding this. But I think we really need to emphasize this a lot more and be able to provide examples of how we are doing this, not only from a curricular perspective, but also we're really doing this in how we are introducing students into the classroom within the context of the syllabus and other places. Like I said, even with simple steps like providing a statement. These can go a long way in being able to impactfully implement social determinants of health. You can go to various perspectives. There's typically 4 perspectives, but one way that I always talk about is really practical to apply social determinants of health is the Healthy People 2030 version of the social determinants of health. So if you haven't looked at that, I encourage each and every one of you to take a look at how that is implemented from the perspective. So, it might be a really good idea to establish an institute in social determinants if this has not been done within your institution, but also create a social determinants hub where this can also span out into expanding more research in social determinants of health within the 5 domains: economic stability, healthcare, having access to the built environment, also the social and community context, and really economic stability. All of these are critical and crucial to be able to have a proper education. So notice I said one of the 5 domains is education, but really all of these are comprise education and are related to education. So this is important to know and understand. So I hope some of this has helped in better explaining and better articulating how exactly social determinants of health fits in within your university. Thank you for listening.